In March of 1944, deep within the jungles of Burma, there was a British soldier. No one knew his name, his rank, his unit, where he came from. None of it was clear. But one thing was certain: this man was a British hero. Yet none of this was ever recorded. But what he did that night saved dozens of soldiers' lives and halted the Japanese advance for hours. This is the story of a hero that history forgot. This is the story of the silent sniper. If you asked what the toughest front of World War II was, most people would say the beaches of Normandy or the streets of Stalingrad. But the real answer was something else entirely: Burma. The world's most brutal battlefield. A place where your enemy wasn't just the soldier in front of you. Your enemy was the malaria-carrying mosquitoes. Your enemy was the leeches clinging to your body. Your enemy was the humidity reaching 95%. And your enemy was the Japanese snipers lying in ambush behind every tree. Now pause and think. If this video interests you, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, because on this channel, we uncover heroic stories buried in the dusty pages of history. Now, let's get back to our story. The Burma front was one of the darkest and most glorious chapters in British military history. When the Japanese invaded Burma in 1942, British forces experienced the longest retreat in history, a 1,600-kilometer flight. Exhausted, sick, demoralized soldiers were driven all the way to the Indian border. But this defeat was the beginning of a rebirth. The 14th Army under General William Slim was like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Slim taught his soldiers three things. First, don't fear the jungle, use it. Second, the Japanese aren't invincible, they just fight differently. Third, each of you is as valuable as an entire army. It was this third lesson that formed the foundation of the silent sniper's story. The jungles of Burma were the most dangerous hunting grounds in the world. In the treetops, Japanese snipers would wait motionless for hours. They would tie themselves to branches, camouflage themselves with leaves, and stay in ambush for days for a single target. A British officer wrote in his diary, "In this jungle, every step could mean death. Every rustle of leaves could herald your last breath. To survive here, your eyes must be on the trees, your ears on the wind." Japanese snipers were so effective that British units didn't dare pass through certain areas. A single sniper could pin down an entire battalion for hours. That's why the British began training their own snipers. But sniping in the Burma jungle wasn't like it was in Europe. Here, distances were short, fields of vision were limited, and attacks could come from any direction at any moment. In the training camps of the 14th Army, selected soldiers were put through a special program. They were taught the language of the jungle, how to detect enemy movement from the rustle of leaves, how to disappear among the shadows, how to change the course of battle with a single bullet. One of these soldiers would become a legend without ever having his name recorded in history. What we know about the silent sniper comes from the testimonies of surviving soldiers and brief notes in unit diaries. What's certain is this: that night there was a man there, and that man accomplished the impossible. March 1944. The battles of Kohima and Imphal were about to begin. The Japanese were planning their final major offensive to invade India. 85,000 Japanese soldiers were advancing toward British defense lines. The objective was clear. First, take Kohima. Then encircle Imphal. After that, open the gates to India. Had they succeeded, the course of the war could have changed entirely. British intelligence had detected that a portion of the Japanese force would advance from the southeast. The vanguard of this force was a reconnaissance team of about 60 men. Their mission was to find weak points in the British defense lines and open a path for the main force. If this team succeeded, a gap would be opened for the thousands of soldiers behind them. British commanders faced a difficult decision. If they sent their main forces to stop this advance team, they would weaken other fronts. If they didn't, the Japanese would scout the defense lines and find the weak points. It was at this very moment that an unknown sergeant stepped forward. The diaries mention only one name, but whether this name is real is disputed. We'll call him the Silent Sniper. The silent sniper made a simple proposal to his commanders. "Give me 3 days. Let me go alone. I'll stop or slow that team. You use that time to strengthen your defenses." The commanders objected at first. How could one man stop 60? But the silent sniper was determined, and most importantly, his plan made sense. In the jungles of Burma, numerical superiority didn't always mean an advantage. Dense vegetation, short lines of sight, and uncertain terrain offered great opportunities to small forces. A sniper in the right position could frighten, slow, or even stop dozens of enemies. Japanese soldiers were known for their courage, but they too feared an invisible enemy. The silent sniper set out into the darkness that night. He carried a Lee Enfield rifle, 100 rounds, a knife, 2 days' rations, and a compass. He took no radio. He asked for no support, just himself, his weapon, and the jungle. When he entered the jungle, the world behind him vanished. There was no longer rank, chain of command, or battle plans. There was only hunter and prey. The silent sniper was the hunter, and his prey was 60 Japanese soldiers. The first night he tracked the enemy force. The Japanese soldiers were careful but not perfect. The signs they left behind, broken branches, crushed leaves, the faint smell of cigarettes, gave away their direction. The silent sniper moved like a ghost. He slept in the shadows of trees during the day and moved at night. He watched them, estimated their numbers, learned their habits. On the second day, he noticed the Japanese team taking a break. They had gathered by a small stream. They were filling their canteens, studying their maps, planning their next move. The silent sniper took up position on a hillside 300 meters away. Here, he had to make a critical decision. If he opened fire immediately, he could neutralize a few enemies, but then his position would be revealed and a chase would begin. A sniper's greatest advantage was mystery. If the enemy couldn't see you, didn't know where the fire was coming from, couldn't estimate your numbers, then your real power wasn't the number of your bullets, but the fear you created. The silent sniper decided to wait. When the Japanese finished their break and set off, he followed them from a distance. But this time he did something different. He predicted the path they would take and got ahead of them via a shortcut. The trail the Japanese team would take passed through a narrow valley, a passage flanked by steep cliffs on both sides, covered by trees above. A perfect ambush point for a sniper. The silent sniper climbed the eastern slope and found himself a nest, a position among the roots of a giant tree covered with ferns. From here he could see the valley perfectly, but seeing him from the valley was nearly impossible. He waited. Hours passed. The sun reached its peak, then began sliding westward. And finally, he heard them. Snapping branches, low voices, rhythmic footsteps, the Japanese reconnaissance team was entering the valley. The silent sniper studied them through his scope. 2 scouts walked at the front. Behind them came the main group. At the rear, a few soldiers served as the rear guard. There must have been 55 or 60 of them in total. They all had their weapons ready, but weren't on alert. They weren't expecting to encounter a British force this deep. The silent sniper took a calm breath. His finger went to the trigger. He chose his target. He set his sights on the officer walking in the middle of the group, carrying a map. A sniper must always choose valuable targets. Commanders, radio operators, machine gunners. Neutralize these, and the enemy force's brain and muscle would be paralyzed. He took his first shot. The sound took a second to echo through the jungle, but within that second, the bullet had found its target. The Japanese officer collapsed where he stood. Chaos erupted. The Japanese soldiers reflexively threw themselves to the ground. They raised their weapons and looked around. But they didn't know where the fire was coming from. The silent sniper waited a minute. He didn't move. Then he chose his second target, a radio operator.
Another single shot. Another hit. The Japanese began firing frantically in all directions, but it was aimless, random fire. The silent sniper had already changed position. He shifted 10 meters to the left, found a new angle, took his third shot. Another machine gunner went down. In the first 5 minutes, 4 Japanese soldiers were neutralized. But more importantly, the remaining 50-odd soldiers were completely paralyzed. They didn't know where to shoot. They didn't know how many enemies they faced. They didn't know whether to advance or retreat. This was the true power of a sniper. You could stop dozens of men with just a few bullets. Because war isn't won with bullets alone. Fear, uncertainty, and panic could inflict damage that no weapon could. The Japanese team commander was trying to make a quick decision. Behind him lay 4 dead soldiers. He couldn't see the enemy. He didn't know their numbers. Logically, it had to be a large ambush. Perhaps a British battalion had set a trap. He considered retreating, but that was dangerous too. An attack could come from behind. Finally, he decided to advance. But this time, much more slowly, much more cautiously. He split his soldiers into small groups, spread out, and began advancing step by step. This was exactly what the silent sniper wanted. A rapid advance had turned into a crawl that would take hours. By sunset, the Japanese team was still in the middle of the valley. Under normal circumstances, they would have covered this distance in an hour. Now, 4 hours had passed, and they had only reached the halfway point. The silent sniper would fire occasionally, then change position. Even when his shots weren't lethal, they slowed the enemy. When night fell, the Japanese team could no longer advance. Moving against an invisible enemy in the darkness was suicide. They decided to take up positions and wait for morning. With this decision, the silent sniper had cost them a day. 1 man against 60 enemies alone. But the battle wasn't over yet. The silent sniper knew that come morning, the Japanese would attack in a more organized fashion. Perhaps they would send out reconnaissance groups. Perhaps they would try to surround him. A lone sniper's advantage lay in surprise and movement. Stay in one place too long, and you'd become the hunted. Throughout the night, he was lost in thought. How many rounds did he have left? About 90. Was it enough? Perhaps. What was his water and ration situation? He could manage 1 more day. But the real question was this. Could he hold out for 1 more day, and would 1 more day be enough? Is this story exciting you? If so, you can show your support by subscribing. He didn't know the answer, but he knew one thing. The comrades he'd left behind, the defenders at Kohima and Imphal, needed every hour. Every hour meant more trenches being dug, more ammunition being distributed, more soldiers taking position. And the silent sniper was buying them that time. What would tomorrow bring? What strategy would the Japanese team employ? And how much longer could the silent sniper hold out alone? The answers to all these questions would emerge with the dawn. In the next episode, you'll witness the silent sniper's most difficult day. The Japanese hunter teams trying to surround him, a cat-and-mouse game in the jungle, and an unexpected decision. This story will surprise you, thrill you, and perhaps bring tears to your eyes. Don't miss it.
We're continuing our story rapidly. The situation is becoming even more critical. Before dawn broke, the silent sniper opened his eyes. Sleeping in the jungle, truly sleeping, was impossible. At most, a few minutes of interrupted dozing, then being on alert again. The nights of the Burma jungle were more dangerous than the days. In the darkness, every sound could be a threat, every shadow an enemy. But the silent sniper had made it through this night. Now the real test was beginning. The Japanese team had kept watch throughout the night. Their losses had shaken them. Yesterday, they had lost 4 men and still hadn't seen their enemy. This situation was creating unease even among the disciplined Japanese soldiers. An invisible enemy was far more frightening than a known one, because you could fight what you knew. But how could you fight the unknown? The team commander held a meeting at dawn. According to the notes left behind, 2 options were discussed. Either they would retreat and wait for reinforcements, or they would find and destroy the enemy. Retreating meant failure in the mission. In Japanese military tradition, this was unacceptable. Shame was worse than death. So the second option was adopted. They would hunt the enemy. The commander divided his team into 3 groups. The first group, the main force of 20 men, would continue advancing directly. They would be an open target, but would also serve as bait. The second group, 15 men, would circle around from the right flank. The third group would do the same from the left. They would surround the sniper and trap him. At least, that was the plan. With the first light of dawn, the silent sniper saw the Japanese beginning to move. Looking through his scope, he noticed the team had split up. This wasn't a good sign. So they weren't going to make a simple advance. They were hunting him. Now the hunter could become the hunted. He made a quick assessment. His current position was no longer safe. If the Japanese were trying to form a perimeter, staying still meant death. He had to move. But where? He had 2 options. Either he would fall back and create distance, or he would make an unexpected move and dive into the enemy's midst. Logic said to retreat, but the silent sniper thought beyond logic. What would happen if he retreated? The Japanese would relax, regain speed, and reach their objectives within a few hours. His mission wasn't just to survive. His mission was to stop them, or at least slow them down. So he decided to do the unexpected. He advanced toward the enemy. This wasn't reckless courage. It was a calculated risk. The Japanese thought they had left him behind. As they were forming their perimeter, they were expanding backward. If the silent sniper moved quickly, he could slip through the circle and get ahead of the main group. He would strike them not from behind, but from the front. He glided silently through the ferns. He placed each step with care. Breaking a dry branch, knocking over a loose stone, any of these could be a death sentence. The Burma jungle was a friend to the careful, an enemy to the careless. The silent sniper knew this jungle now. He breathed with it. Within half an hour, he passed near the left flank group. 15 Japanese soldiers were advancing in a fan formation. The distance between them was about 10 meters. The silent sniper lay pressed to the ground behind a bush only 30 meters away from them. He tried to control his heartbeat. A soldier looked in his direction. His eyes passed right over him, but he didn't see him. The camouflage had worked. After the Japanese passed, the silent sniper continued on his way. He was now outside the perimeter. He needed to take up position ahead of the main group. He drew a mental map of the terrain. He predicted the Japanese's probable route, and he found a perfect ambush point. He took up position at the foot of a small hill behind a fallen tree. This was a narrow point in the valley. The Japanese would have to pass through here, and when they did, the silent sniper would be waiting for them. The waiting began. Minutes felt like hours. The sun rose, the temperature increased, the humidity became suffocating. Sweat ran into his eyes, but he didn't wipe it. He remained motionless. For a sniper, patience was as important as good aim. An impatient sniper was a dead sniper. Finally, he saw them. The main group was advancing. Unlike yesterday, they were much more cautious. They had left space between themselves, kept their weapons ready, constantly scanned their surroundings. But they were still missing something. They were looking for danger behind them, not in front. The silent sniper chose his first target. One of the scouts walking at the head of the group. He applied pressure to the trigger, held his breath, fired. The bullet found its target. The scout fell. Chaos erupted again, but this time the Japanese reacted faster. They immediately dropped to the ground and began firing, but again in the wrong direction, toward the rear, because they expected their enemy to come from behind.
The silent sniper took advantage of this confusion. He took his second shot. Another soldier fell. Then he immediately changed position. He rolled away from the fallen tree to the right and took cover in a depression. By the time the Japanese directed their fire at him, he was already gone. The third shot came from a different angle. The Japanese were bewildered. The enemy seemed to be everywhere. How many were there? 10? 20? A platoon? In reality, it was just one man. But that one man was fighting like a platoon. The firefight lasted 20 minutes. During this time, the silent sniper neutralized 5 Japanese soldiers, but more importantly, the team couldn't advance a single inch. They lay pressed to the ground, waiting in fear. Then something changed. The Japanese commander must have analyzed the situation. The fire was coming from one direction, and each time only a single shot. This was a sniper, probably a single sniper. The commander gave orders, and the Japanese began employing a new tactic. While 5 soldiers laid down heavy fire, the others began crawling forward, maneuvering under suppressive fire. It was a classic tactic, and it was working. The silent sniper could no longer raise his head. Every time he did, dozens of bullets whizzed around him. At this point, he had to make a critical decision. If he stayed in his position, he would eventually be surrounded. If the Japanese got close enough, a sniper's advantage would disappear. At close range, numerical superiority determined everything. He had to fall back. The silent sniper pulled out a smoke grenade. This was his last card. He detonated the grenade, and thick white smoke covered his position. This few seconds of visual obstruction saved his life. Hiding behind the smoke, he sprang from the depression and plunged into the jungle. When the smoke cleared, the Japanese found an empty position. The enemy had vanished again. But this time, he had left a trail. Blood-mixed soil, broken branches, a direction. The silent sniper had been wounded. He had taken a grazing wound to his left arm. It wasn't deep, but it was bleeding, and this blood offered a map to those following him. When the midday sun was at its peak, the chase was in full swing. The Japanese were now the hunters. They followed the blood trail, searching every bush, every tree. The silent sniper was trying not to become the prey. He was wounded, exhausted, running low on water and rations, but he hadn't been defeated yet. He wrapped his wound with a piece of cloth and stopped the bleeding. Then he made a clever move. He found a stream and began walking in the water. This would cut off the blood trail and, in a pursuit without dogs, would make him lose his trackers. After following the stream's flow for half an hour, he emerged onto land. He was now in a completely different area. Finding him would be much harder for the Japanese. But buying time wasn't enough. He had to stop them. He made a new plan. If direct confrontation was too dangerous, he had to cause damage indirectly. He had to do something that would break the Japanese morale, make them hesitate, make their advance impossible. In the Burma jungles, the British had developed a tactic: cutting Japanese communication lines and setting booby traps on the cut ends. The silent sniper knew this tactic, but he had no explosives. Still, he could be creative. He set up a simple trap on a trail the Japanese would pass through. He stretched a thin wire between 2 trees and rigged a fallen branch. When the wire was tripped, the branch would fall and make noise. It wasn't a lethal trap, but it would make the Japanese paranoid. They would think there could be a trap with every step and slow down even more. He set up several more similar traps. Then he left bullets at strategic points. Empty cartridges, arranged to create the impression that multiple snipers had been there, that a unit had passed through. Psychological warfare could be as effective as physical warfare. In the afternoon, the Japanese fell into the first trap. No one was injured, but the sound of the falling branch startled everyone. Weapons went up, panic spread. A few minutes passed before the commander calmed them down. Then they looked at the ground and saw the empty cartridges. The British had been here, and there were more of them than they had thought. The Japanese commander was in a difficult position. His casualties were mounting. Yesterday and today they had lost a total of 9 men. The enemy was still invisible, and now there were traps too. Maybe they were facing a brigade. Maybe this was a trap and they were being surrounded. Should he send word to the main force? The radio operator was dead. The soldier carrying the backup radio was wounded. Communication was difficult. The commander considered retreating, but a voice inside told him to continue. Japanese soldiers didn't retreat. They fought until death. They decided to advance, but now every step was thought over twice. Every branch was suspicious. Every shadow dangerous.
Their rate of advance had dropped to nearly zero.
Covering the distance they would normally travel in half a day now seemed impossible. The silent sniper watched from a distance. His plan was working. The Japanese had almost come to a standstill. But he was also at his limit. He was wounded, exhausted, hungry, and thirsty. How much longer could he hold out? Toward evening, he had to make a decision. Either he would fall back and consider his mission complete, return to British lines, or he would make one final move and deal the Japanese a lasting blow. The second option was much more dangerous. But the silent sniper wasn't a man who ran from danger. As the sun set, he observed the Japanese team one last time. They were making camp. They couldn't light fires because that would give away their position. They were eating cold food, speaking in whispers, determining the watch rotation. Exhaustion and fear could be read on their faces. The silent sniper waited for darkness. Under the cover of night, he would make his final move. This wouldn't be a suicide attack. It would be a calculated, surgical operation. His target was clear, the Japanese commander. Cut off the head, and the snake couldn't coil. When night fell, the jungle transformed into an entirely different world. The green hell of day gave way to the black void of night. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, providing a dim glow. The silent sniper began moving in this dimness. Approaching the Japanese camp required incredible care. There were sentries, there could be traps. The slightest sound could trigger an alarm. The silent sniper moved like a ghost. With each step, he stopped, listened, then took the next step. In 20 minutes, he covered 50 meters. But now he was at the edge of the camp. He counted the sentries. There were 3, one to the north, one to the south, one to the east. The west was open. Probably the jungle was too dense on that side to be considered a threat. That was exactly where the silent sniper was approaching from. Crawling, he passed through the trees. He passed within a few meters of sleeping soldiers. He could hear their breathing. One snoring pierced the night. He searched for the commander and found him. The man lying slightly apart from the others, under a tree, had to be the commander. A map case was beside him. His sword rested at his waist. Japanese officers never parted from their swords. This gave him away. The silent sniper drew his knife. Using the rifle was impossible. The sound would wake everyone. This had to be close and silent. He continued crawling toward the commander. 5 meters, 3 meters, 1 meter. Subscribe right at this part of the story so we can continue from the most exciting point. Just then, a branch snapped. The tiniest sound, but in the silence of the night, it exploded like a bomb. The commander opened his eyes. For 1 second, he and the silent sniper locked eyes. Then everything happened at once. The commander tried to shout. The silent sniper lunged. 2 bodies tangled together. A brief but violent struggle. The Japanese began waking up. Sounds, shouts, gunfire, chaos. The silent sniper didn't really remember what happened afterward. Everything had happened so fast. But he knew one thing. The commander was no longer moving, and he was still standing. He plunged into the jungle in the darkness. Behind him, guns fired, shouts rose, but no one could see him. The darkness had swallowed him. The silent sniper disappeared into the jungle that night. He ran until he collapsed from exhaustion. Then he fell into a hole and passed out. When he woke, dawn was beginning to break. Every part of his body ached, but he was still alive. The Japanese team was left behind, leaderless, demoralized, paralyzed with fear. They couldn't advance that day, or the next. Finally, they decided to retreat. Their mission had failed. A single man had stopped a 60-man reconnaissance team. What happened to the silent sniper after this is uncertain. Some sources say he reached British lines. Some say he was lost in the jungle. What's certain is that his name appears in no official records. Perhaps he was already sent on another mission. Perhaps his wounds caught up with him. It's unknown. But what is known is this: The battles of Kohima and Imphal ended in British victory. Japan's plan to invade India fell through. And part of this victory was the time won by a sniper fighting alone in the jungle. The silent sniper is perhaps one of history's forgotten heroes. No name, no grave, no medal. But what he did will echo forever. Sometimes one man can make as much difference as an entire army. And sometimes the greatest heroes are the nameless ones. What did this story make you feel? Share in the comments. And in the next episode, we'll discover the silent sniper's legacy, the end of the Burma front, and why this war still matters today. Stay tuned.
We've arrived at the final part of our story. Deep in the jungles of Burma, there was a man. We didn't know his name. We never saw his face. But what he did changed the course of history. The silent sniper remained a legend. And legends never die. Now we're opening the final act of this story. We'll tell you about the legacy the silent sniper left behind, how it determined the fate of the Burma front, and why this forgotten war still matters so much today. Are you ready? Then let's begin. March 1944. Just days after the silent sniper stopped the Japanese reconnaissance team, one of history's bloodiest battles began. The Battle of Kohima. Some call it the Stalingrad of the East. Some call it the greatest victory in British military history. Both descriptions are more than accurate. Kohima was a small mountain town, a strategic point right on the only road between India and Burma. If the Japanese captured it, the gates to India would be thrown wide open. And that's exactly what the Japanese planned. They launched a major assault with 85,000 soldiers. Against them, initially, stood only 1,500 British and Indian soldiers. The numbers were terrifyingly unbalanced, but the British had one critical advantage. That advantage was time. The Japanese reconnaissance teams had failed. Heroes like the silent sniper had blinded the enemy's eyes. This allowed British commanders to gain the critical hours needed to strengthen their defenses. Every hour gained meant one more trench. Every day gained meant hundreds more reinforcement troops. The fighting at Kohima lasted exactly 2 months. From April to June, continuous combat. At some points, the distance between the two sides was only a few meters. Can you imagine? Soldiers entrenched on opposite sides of a tennis court throwing grenades at each other? Bloody battles during the day, collecting the dead at night. This place was hell itself. But the British held on. They repelled every attack with tremendous heroism. They turned back every assault. The Japanese tried again and again, failed again and again. And finally, the British forced the Japanese to retreat. The victory at Kohima became one of the most important turning points of World War II. Japan's dream of India was shattered, and they never recovered. How was this victory possible? Of course, there was the incredible heroism of thousands of soldiers. There was General William Slim's military genius. There was the uninterrupted support of Allied air power. But there was something else that's often overlooked: time. And a significant portion of that time was won by snipers fighting alone in the jungles. The silent sniper was just one of them. The silent sniper's story was actually a small but critical piece of a much larger picture. On the Burma front, there were hundreds, perhaps thousands of similar heroes. Their names never made it into history. Their medals were never given. Their stories were never told. But each one carefully laid a brick of victory. One of them was Lachiman Gurung. If you remember, we talked about him on this channel before. This small-built man from Nepal defended his trench for 4 hours against 200 Japanese soldiers with just one hand. His right hand had been blown apart by a grenade, but he continued using his rifle with his left hand. He killed 31 enemies single-handedly. He received the Victoria Cross and went down in history. But how many Lachiman Gurungs remained nameless?
How many heroes died silently without a witness? Another was Banbakta Gurung. This man captured 5 Japanese positions by himself. First, he shot a sniper in a tree while standing upright. He didn't flinch as bullets whizzed around him. Then he cleared 4 trenches one by one with bayonet and grenades. He charged into the final position with only his kukri knife. He had run out of ammunition, but not courage. He neutralized a Japanese soldier with a rock. Does it sound unbelievable? Yes, but in Burma, the unbelievable was part of daily life.
And there was Michael Almond, a young British officer. He was studying history at Oxford University. He could have had a brilliant academic career. He could have become a professor, written books. But he chose to fight. At the Pinheim Bridge, he attacked Japanese positions alone. He killed 3 Japanese soldiers with his kukri knife. A few days later, he fell in another attack. He was only 21 years old. The Victoria Cross was given to his family long after his death. If you ask what these men had in common, the answer might seem simple. You might say none of them feared death. But no, that's not quite right. They all feared death, actually. Like everyone, like every human being. But they had something much greater than their fears. They had a sense of duty. They had an unwavering loyalty to their comrades. And perhaps most importantly, they had a steel will that absolutely refused to surrender. The silent sniper had this will too. Standing alone against 60 enemies might look like madness from the outside. Who does that? What sane person takes such a risk? But behind that madness was a cool-headed calculation. There was a careful strategy. And most importantly, there was a will that chose to be a hero rather than a victim. If this story has interested you and you want to hear more, please hit the subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss our next video. Because on this channel, we bring history's forgotten heroes to light. Now let's get back to our story. The Burma Front was perhaps the least known, but certainly one of the most important fronts of World War II. The soldiers who fought here gave themselves a very meaningful name, the Forgotten Army. They didn't choose this name for nothing, because the war in Europe captured the attention of the entire world. Newspapers wrote about Normandy. Radios talked about Stalingrad. The fall of Berlin was on everyone's lips. But Kohima? Imphal? Miektila? Most people never even heard these names. Yet the victory won in Burma profoundly affected the course of the war. Japan's plan to invade India was completely destroyed. The Allies' position in Southeast Asia was enormously strengthened, and most importantly, it was proven to the entire world that the Japanese army was not invincible. This psychological impact played a critical role for the rest of the war. When General William Slim wrote his memoirs years after the war, he said, "Every soldier who fought in Burma, regardless of rank, changed the course of history. Whether their names are known or not, they were all heroes." These words applied word for word to the silent sniper as well. He, too, was one of those who changed the flow of history. So did the silent sniper really exist? This question has occupied historians for years. The definitive evidence is quite limited. There are short and vague notes and unit diaries. There are hazy memories told by surviving soldiers years later. There are 1 or 2 unofficial reports. None of these clearly tell the complete story. There are dark spots, gaps, uncertainties. But one thing is known for certain. In the Burma jungles, deep behind enemy lines, there really were snipers fighting alone. These men, who could be considered the pioneers of special forces, rewrote the rules of modern warfare. They personally demonstrated that numerical superiority wasn't always decisive. They proved that one man in the right place, at the right time, with the right decisions, could change the fate of an entire war. The silent sniper may not have been a single person. Perhaps it was the merging of many snipers' stories over time. Perhaps it was a legend, an epic interpretation of reality. But legends don't arise from nothing. There's always a kernel of truth behind every legend. And Burma's truth was filled with heroism from start to finish. Today, Burma is known by the name Myanmar. The traces of war are still on that land. There's a memorial at Kohima. Thousands of people visit every year. These words are written on it. When you go home, tell them of us and say, "For your tomorrow, we gave our today." These words apply to all the heroes of Burma. They apply more than ever to the silent sniper. American and British soldiers fought side by side throughout World War II. They shed blood together in Europe. They died together in the Pacific. And yes, they wrote epics of heroism together in Burma. This partnership wasn't just a military alliance. It was the defense of shared values, the defense of freedom, the defense of democracy and human dignity. Heroes like the silent sniper put their lives on the line for these values. Today, those values still retain their importance, perhaps more important than ever. The world faces new threats, new enemies emerge, new battlefields open. But some things never change. The importance of courage doesn't change. The meaning of sacrifice doesn't change. The power of one person to make a difference doesn't change. The story of the silent sniper reminds us of exactly these things. A single person truly matters. A single action can truly change history. And sometimes the greatest heroes are those who remain nameless. They didn't expect applause. They didn't chase medals. They didn't dream of newspaper headlines. They simply did what needed to be done, and then they silently faded into the darkness. In this video series, we told the story of Burma's forgotten army. We shared the legend of the silent sniper. We remembered the unknown heroes of the war. We hope these stories have deeply affected you. We hope they've helped you remember these people buried in the dusty pages of history. They don't deserve to be forgotten. But the story doesn't end here. It never ends, because history is full of thousands of heroes waiting to be told, each one a separate epic, each one a separate source of inspiration, each one proof that humanity can reach the light even in dark times. And we will continue to tell these stories every day. In our next video, we'll discover the story of another war, another front, another nameless hero. We won't say where we're going just yet. Let's just say this. What you'll hear will surprise you. It might bring tears to your eyes. It might make you stand up and applaud. That story is just as powerful. Don't miss it. Silent Sniper, wherever you are, this video is dedicated to you. It was made for you and thousands of nameless heroes like you. Our freedom was built upon your sacrifice. Thanks to the blood you shed, the sweat you poured, the pain you endured, we live freely today. We will never forget. That's our promise. General Douglas MacArthur once said, "Old soldiers never die, they just fade away." The silent sniper may have faded away. His name doesn't appear in the pages of history. There's no photograph. His grave isn't even known. But his legend shines, and it will continue to shine. Because stories of courage have no expiration date. They're passed down through generations. Deep in the jungles of Burma, the wind still whispers through the leaves. Perhaps that whisper is the silent sniper's last breath. Perhaps it's the shared echo of thousands like him. Close your eyes and listen. Perhaps you'll hear it too. Heroes never truly die. They live in our stories. They live in our memories. They live forever in our hearts. And now this story is yours. Share it. Tell it to your loved ones. Keep it alive for future generations. Because when a story is shared, it becomes immortal. And the silent sniper deserves immortality to the fullest. See you soon, hoping to meet in the next story. Take good care of yourselves. And remember, history is carried on the shoulders of those who remember. Let's carry this burden together. Let's take on this responsibility together. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts with us in the comments. See you in the next video. Long live the immortal heroes.